Say what in tertiary institutions, to give you a redefinition of the key terms, has a significant impact and transformation on social norms and policy, or it is no more than a group of people meeting to perform some activities. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Arnold Kasnambare, and here to just redefine every key term so that as we are debating, you may have a clear understanding of what it is that we have to debate about. Now, just to look at the first key term, the movement, the most important of them. A group of people who share the same ideas and norms, working on the society to change the perceptions that the people have of those social norms, of the policy, so that they may impact a change. A club, a group of people who meet together regularly to perform some activity or have some discussions. Tertiary institutions, simply meaning organizations that offer post-secondary or after high school education. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as we are beginning to talk about movements, we have to understand that, as I've said, that the movement is the key of the key term of all the terms that we have. We've got to give you characteristics of the movement even beyond just the dictionary definition. Now, in as much as a movement is about working together on an ideology so that we may change that the norms that the people are having and the policies that our governments have, it is necessary to understand that movements are transformative. That is, they bring about change. So they are, first of all, resisting things that are within our norms that we feel for reasons that, in as much as we may have had them for a time and they were in our norms, they are negative or they are social ills. Thus, it is necessary to change. And that they advance ideologies. Now, an ideology is just something, a perception which is held by a general majority, and they perceive that it is good, which is why it gets to for now and form the social norms. Now, they are also inspiring and passionate in that whatever is in a movement or whoever is in a movement is somebody who feels whatever they are standing for is something that is so valuable, something that affects society so much that it cannot continue just by virtue of it having been. But what? Because they are inspired by this realization, it is no longer just a basic thing that somebody can meet and discuss or just an activity for a club, but something that they will feel at heart. Now, these are the key characteristics of now what forms a movement. And having defined that, we can now get to give you the gist of what it is that we say a movement is, and why say what meet that criteria, and give you all the points that we have as the affirmative side.
Point, Arnold.
Yes.
On your point of definition, where you mentioned that movements are transformative, bring about norms, inspiring and passionate, we're not particularly opposing this definition because it is a very beautiful definition. But the fact is, don't clubs also do this? For example, but clubs like Water that are also transformative in society and actually teach character.
Enough, you have gone past your time. Please
yes.
work with the timekeeper.
Ladies and gentlemen, clubs at some points do meet and do discuss issues, but like I've been giving you the characteristics that we eventually differentiate between a club which has some things which it shares with a movement, which is why I've given you that they are transformative, which clubs may be, but I'm giving this criteria so that at the end of the day, when you appreciate a number of characteristics that are there on a movement, you can then differentiate with a mere club, which is why our topic is that element of the mere club, the just, the only, the no more than. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I have put our points in two categories, that of membership and that of activities and results that are achieved by movements above clubs, because the element that we need is a distinction of the two. Now, a movement above a club, when it comes to the issue of its membership, is that it builds. In as much as there are elements that have the potential to build when clubs are meeting for things sometimes which are taken to be recreational, things which are taken to be temporary, a movement is building with the picture of the long run. Building with the picture of the long run. People whom even after leaving the organization, because they have been built and they understand, and just the second point, because they are passionate and inspired, they get to own the club. So you get to own Say What. If Say What is a movement, you want to continue with it because it has built you and you are passionate about it. But a club does not have this element of that building that impacts the long run, which is a movement, that building that inspires a passion within you that says, I want to continue, because that is what differentiates a movement and a club. Now, our third point, going to the category of activities, we are saying that movements above just activity, which sometimes brings about change, go even higher to issues like influencing policy. So influencing policy on issues such as SRH, right, as we are having here, which is the mandate of Say What, which even in the virtue of this conference, you have seen in act. It instills a progressive mindset within the people and facilitates pragmatic change. So just first talk about in facilitating pragmatic change through an open dialogue that we have seen being exhibited at this conference. Now through that open dialogue is what gets to have now as the next point, instilling progressive mindsets in the people as they realize what worked, what they thought was right, which can no longer work. Now, movements have got the big picture because of ideology, and they are relevant issues focused. And our last point is that movements are multifaceted, not just basic activity, but well-chosen strategies in a number of areas to get to build that overall big picture we're talking about, to get to build those people who have the passion to continue, such that in as much as club will act and achieve results, they will stop somewhere. With this much, we can have movements that are continuous, that are not just a legacy of history, but will go on forever.
All right, the motion at hand states that Say What in tertiary institutions, a movement or just a mere club. And we stand firm opposing the topic. We say that Say What is just a mere club. Why? Because for it to be a movement, it needs to take strides. Why? Because for it to be a movement, it needs to innovate. Ladies and gentlemen, let us look at what we are doing right now in this National Students' Conference. Look at the theme for the conference. Innovate, interrogate, as well as accelerate. What we are doing right now is we are interrogating. And then after interrogating our standing and affirming that we are a club, then we are going to innovate. And after innovating, we will accelerate towards being a movement. Why are we saying that this is just a club? Let me start here by saying that, by defining what MIE is. They define all the key terms properly, but ladies and gentlemen, let's come back to just saying MIE. You say that MIE means just, MIE means no more than. But ladies and gentlemen, denied. When we're saying MIE, we're saying that it is lacking high level of influence. MIE is about lacking influence. It's about having smaller numbers. So now, as a side, we are saying that Say What for now is lacking influence. Say What for now does not have the numbers it requires for it to be called a movement. Let me put this into perspective and give you taken.
What numbers can you give us that you say What has reached this probably level? We have gotten the numbers of a movement. Would you define the number that is a movement?
Right. Let me put you to perspective. Look at Midland State University. It's a campus with 23,000 pupils, and the Say What Club has 140 students. That is 0.65%. So if you're going to call a movement 0.65%, ladies and gentlemen, it leaves a lot to desire. Now, if I may move on, let us look at what is required for one thing to be called a movement. You need to get educated on the movement. You need to make it popular. You need to rally behind the troops. And then for a club, the club need to have a constitution. There is a lot of strict work around accountability, and then there is the assignment of roles. Now, we are going to look at this debate from two angles. We are going to have a principal approach. What we are looking at, what is practical and what is theoretical. Ladies and gentlemen, let us not lie to ourselves. For now, it is all just in theory. We are not yet there. And for now, the moment we realize that we are not yet there, then we will start making strides towards being a movement.
Point of information.
Taken again.
When you are saying that we are acting and we are interrogating, we are innovating and we're accelerating, right? And you're saying Say What is not taking strides because a movement needs to take strides, right? And then now you talk about results. Which level of results?
Time up. Please continue.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it is against the background of such that we as the opposers have come up with points to actually reaffirm our case and show you that Say What for now is just a mere club. First of all, when Say What is registered in our tertiary institutions, it is registered under clubs. Tertiary institutions have clubs on Wednesdays, and we go for Rotaract, we go for chess, we go for Say What, ladies and gentlemen. Say What is just a club for now. Secondly, Say What seeks to address sexual and reproductive health issues. This is what affects everyone tonight. This is what affects everyone in tertiary institutions. And now, with the scope of Say What affecting everyone, it means that it's just a club because it has lower influence. Our third point is Say What is a safe space that is regulated by certain standards. My partner will come and explain on that point. And then the third one is the issue of influence. Just now when we were walking in here, our moderator told us to go on Twitter and look and actually be taking Say What and doing all that. But ladies and gentlemen, you discover that our Twitter page has 3,620 followers, right? That is a mere number. Look at the number of retweets that our posts are getting, ladies and gentlemen. Some of them are even going without getting retweets. Now, let me give you an example of a movement that you're all familiar with, Tajamuka last year. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the movement because it was trending each and every day. You would look into it and see that actually this is a movement. But with Say What, that does not exist. We have our hashtag NSC 2018, but is it trending? How many people are retweeting, ladies and gentlemen? Let us not overcloud ourselves by thinking that we are a movement when we are not. And then our last point as a side.
Order.
Our last point as a side is that we need to be there present on social media. The moment we are like that, then we'll move forward. To reconsolidate our case, ladies and gentlemen, let us come back to this theme of this year's National Students Conference. Interrogate, let us introspect, let us look deep into what we want to do. Let us look deep into where we want to go as a club. Then after doing that, we'll come up with innovative ideas, thinking of how we can make our Twitter page visible, how we can make our Facebook page visible, how we can actually make ourselves known out there. And the moment we have done that, then we'll be able to say we are a movement, because that is the ultimate goal, ladies and gentlemen. And just recently, for those who do not know, there was an organizational development program that was going on. There was actually debate on whether Say What is a movement or it's just a media, or even this debate itself. The moment you find yourself presenting yourself that you are a club or a movement, it shows that there is a loophole. The moment you still have an argument in your head shows that you are a movement.
First and foremost, I do say, Mr. Wekos, you do have a colorful language, but that does not mean to say your points are valid. First and foremost,
Order.
just because you're... First and foremost, thank you. You spoke of registration of a movement versus a club. Who has registered a movement? Was the Tajamuka movement registered? You spoke of Say What not being a movement because it was not registered. And yet the Tajamuka movement that you're mentioning so much was never registered. And therefore, your rebuttal does not hold any water. 1. 2, you spoke of the level of influence that we as Say What have. Was the Minister of Health and Childcare not here? Was the Minister of Higher and Tertiary Education just not here? To say the points that the Say What students within the institution have to say. If a movement is influenced because of social media, then ladies and gentlemen, we might as well just conclude this. Because according to us, a movement dismantles what society calls the norm. A movement confronts the issues that are affecting the society, which is what Say What is doing. As of now, we are influencing policies around abortion. Is that not a societal norm that we're dismantling? As of now, we're empowering women to say, get out there and stand for yourself. Is that not a societal norm that we're dismantling? Unless, of course, if you want us to be fighting for likes and retweets on Twitter, the first step. Now, going on to reiterating what my first speaker has mentioned, we said our argument is based on 3 things: activities and results, membership, and of course, the characteristics of a movement. First and foremost, we spoke about influence in policy. How? By facilitating a pragmatic dialogue. This is one. As I'm talking to you right now, we're talking about realistic solutions
how that affects the society and how we can deal with them by influencing that policy, by having the minister here, such that tomorrow, on Friday, actually have a meeting to discuss the comprehensive sexuality education that we're talking about on that panel. Second and fourth, no, let me educate you first. Second point, we are saying a movement is multifaceted. Where we're saying Say What is the broader movement that has got the Web for Life first part, the second part, which is the water. And therefore, as part of the broader movement, we are saying we are going to mainly focus on the women's issues and digress into what it is that actually affects them by having the Web of Life and the Say What, by having the water for the men as well to address their specific issues. 3, we spoke about how our movement is transformative. How does it transform the society? Well, because of the unprecedented results and efforts that it has, that is how it is transforming the society. I would like to give an example of our alumni, Mr. Glenn Jiwayo, who right now, aside of his busy schedule, is here to facilitate Say What. If Say What as a movement has not transformed his ideology on how to be a progressive society, then I do not know what we're doing. Ladies and gentlemen, that just affirms that Say What is a movement and not just a mere gathering of people such as your Rotaract, where your Musa Wekos belong, and Vanessa. Ladies and gentlemen, we spoke about how Say What confronts and dismantles the issues. That is to say, we break the silence. As is right now, we're giving a voice to the voiceless. Because we've said the society recognizes a normal voice, here we are, breaking the silence. Now let us navigate that broken silence and ensure that each and every one of us in the society is transformed and is empowered such that this movement can continue on. Because we said that our movement is about living a legacy and not dying. The moment I leave this earth, believe you me, there is another Siletema Maposa who will do a better job. Because Say What as a movement is a legacy and not a history. Say What is a movement where the members are passionate about what it is that they're doing to inspire people, to inspire the young generation. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about how the topic for today, or rather the theme of the conference, is to interrogate, to innovate, and to accelerate those two. We have got the Learning October, the leadership, the participation and grooming that already under the Say What movement we have conducted. And therefore we are making strides as a movement to ensure that we keep growing. Just as I said, ladies and gentlemen, this movement, it builds and it grooms you and it equips you for the future. If there's any point of information at this moment in time, I'll take. Then it is well, let me continue with my speech, my 7 minutes is not up. Ladies and gentlemen, when my first speaker said you become Say What, he meant you embody what you move for. As I'm standing right here, I'm standing in front of you as an empowered female who can talk about sexually related health rights, because this movement is instilled in me. Because this movement, wherever I go, I am Say What. And whenever I walk the street, I know that I am representing what as Say What we stand for, which is a progressive future, which is a female student, a male student who knows where he is going with his life and is able to tackle the policies of this world and the norms, and not just all of the machine that is already existing, but confront the issues, dismantle the societal norms, and take the future forward. My first partner also spoke about how the scope and range and meaning of a movement differs from that of a club. You will notice that a club is confined to the limitations of the university, whereas a movement can occur anywhere. As is right now, Rotaract students of Midland State University cannot meet here because this is not Midland State University. But as Say What, we are meeting here, not at the university, not within the confines of the tertiary institution. And what are we doing? We are moving with the agenda. We are transforming minds, ladies and gentlemen. We're dismantling what the society terms the youth. The men stood about 45 minutes ago talking about how they're helping women to tackle GBV issues, he for she. That for me is a stride. That for me is a movement in which we have transformed the minds of men to note how they also play a part in gender-based violence issues.
So, ladies and gentlemen, the problem that our movers of this motion have today is that Silatemba thinks that because she came from another city and then she moved to Harare, then that makes sense.
Order. We will have order in the room. Please continue.
But then the type of movement we're talking about here in this debate today is not on whether Silatemba came from somewhere else. I'll give you an example. I had a friend when I was in grade 6 and she was 11 years old. But because she had a big body, she began to develop breasts and she began to develop, a big body and an attractive body. And then she made sure that she imitated the teenagehood. But ladies and gentlemen, that did not make her a teenager because the years had not actually reached what it needs to be a teenager. So we appreciate the fact that SAYWHAT adopts some tenets when it comes to their programs of a movement. But then, does that make them a movement? Food for thought. So, in order for a team to win this debate today, they must be able to articulate on these two questions or these 2 points. So, number 1, has SAYWHAT achieved or reached the adequate standards of a movement? And number 2, numbers and trends are a fulcrum of a movement. And does SAYWHAT really have that? I'll put that to you.
Order. Please, you're eating into your time. Go on.
And then how Musa came here and defined mere to you. Mere does not mean only or just, but mere is the measurement of the number or the scope. And by mere, we're saying that SAYWHAT is small on being called a movement, but then it is operating mostly on being a club, and that is what defines it. So if I tell you that Arnold's playlist is merely a hip hop playlist, I'm not sidelining the 2 R&B songs I can find in Arnold's playlist, but I'm basically saying that is mostly what he listens to. If I say Silatemba is a diva, but then on Sunday I see a church wearing a long dress and that is a bit decent, that does not sideline that fact, but I'm basically saying this is what he spends most of the time on. And with what SAYWHAT is doing, it is mostly considered as a club and not a movement because there are certain standards it has to have for it to be called a movement, and I'll tell you why. So on to my rebuttals. The first speaker came here, Arnold, they told us that a movement should be transformative, bring about norms, inspiring and passionate. I'll tell you clubs are like that. I'm so dedicated to my UZ club as the debate club president. But then, ladies and gentlemen, that does not make us a movement, even if we go for Paudik, which was in Tanzania. But then, what we are basically saying here is that we have these tenets that this is a vision that SAYWHAT has. And this vision is interrogate, innovate, and accelerate. The fact that it is a vision, it means that we are getting there. But are we there? Ladies and gentlemen, right now we are interrogating of whether we are a movement or a club. And basically that sidelines us from being a movement. Even though we do have that wish, it will still take us some time. So ladies and gentlemen, the second speaker comes here and undermines the influence of social media. This is why SAYWHAT will remain a club. Because if they wanted it to be a movement, they would actually make sure that they tweet everything that's said on SAYWHAT and they like every post on Facebook, so that the world gets it and it actually spreads there. So on to our matter, as the opposers of this motion, I'll give you a stakeholders analysis and then also in principality and also as an evaluative debate on how side opposers deserve to win this debate. So Arnold came here and told you about the safe space that are regulated and how SAYWHAT has certain standards. We'll tell you about the importance of scope and influence. It is important for you to be very influential for you to be called a movement. He gave you an example of Tajanka. I'll also spread that on giving you an example of Arab Springs in Tunisia, Egypt, that only spread through Twitter. And by that, no one was saying go out and march and, making you to sign papers. But this was people doing it on their own basis to show that the influence was beyond being a member. Right now, I'll tell you, you're all wearing this. If there's someone out there who is very passionate about anti-GBV tendencies, they cannot enter this room simply because they're not a member and they do not have this tag. This tells you that this is a club and it is limited to the members who have signed to get in here. And we tell you that
Order.
before we even got in here, Leo said that if you didn't sign, that's very dangerous. Go and sign. Meaning that, ladies and gentlemen, we are regulated. If I say something that is nasty right now, or that SAYWHAT does not believe it is correct, SAYWHAT has the right to distance itself from me. But from a movement, anyone can hashtag whatever they want because simply there is no that regulation. And SAYWHAT, because of its constitution and code of conduct, it is a club. Are we saying that clubs, because they are small, they are not movements? No, ladies and gentlemen, we have different clubs. In your school, you know that the chess club is influential than the football club. Ladies and gentlemen, that is how it goes. And if SAYWHAT is influential in your society or in your institution, then that is good. But for it to become a movement, we need to see it trending and to see it actually having a lot of numbers and that. So we appreciate the fact that SAYWHAT is taking baby steps towards being a movement, and it will get there. But for now, it is interrogating, ladies and gentlemen. It is not yet there to be actually called a movement. So I've got theory and practical, which is a principle I'll actually talk to you about. We have right now, you would see that most of the Western countries, or even in Africa, they will come and label Zimbabwe as an undemocratic country. Yet our constitution clearly states that we are democratic, and democracy is what guides us. Ladies and gentlemen, even if SAYWHAT has it enshrined in their code of conduct that they are a movement, they are not yet there. Because we are still borrowing from tenets of that and of a movement. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll move on to my examples by actually telling you about the issues of subscriptions, the issues of code of conduct, membership, and how you need to register to also become part of a club. And of which if it's a movement, as Tajamuka, as Arnold mentioned Tajamuka. You will notice that Tajamuka was something that MDCT members, ZANU-PF members, MDCT A to Z, that they actually attended Tajamuka, and no one was influencing them simply because it was a movement, and that is how movements actually get to trend. So ladies and gentlemen, on being evaluative, you'd notice that even if in our institutions, what can we actually say that they were movement? We have the Mugabe must go in Zimbabwe, and we also have the fees must fall in South Africa, of which one university will do something, the next university will carry it on and actually do it without even wanting anyone to influence them, but simply because of something they're passionate about. But even if someone is passionate right now about this program we're doing, they're not allowed to be a part of us simply because of the membership and simply because we have not reached that influence. The oracle that we actually had yesterday, how many external runners were there? That is actually one thing that shows us the influence, that it was mostly SAYWHAT members and it was not even the outside society. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we deserve to win this debate.
And at this point, for us to be able to get to the point where we separate these two teams, I'm going to ask the leaders of the different teams to give their final leaders' replies, and then we'll have the debate winners being announced.
Thank you. Afternoon once more. Ladies and gentlemen, colorful language comes from colorful brains. What we are saying as a side is that SAYWHAT is just a club for now. Our points hold water in this sense. They came here, they told us that SAYWHAT was never registered as a movement. You do not register a movement. What happens is that a movement, you just agree and then you move on towards your set goal. Then they talked of how the minister was here to address us. He was here to address us as a club. We are looking to go forward, and that is why we are having those people coming here to help us to get where we want to go. They talked of how a movement is sustainable, and even mentioned how our alumni, Glenn Hiwayo here, is part of it is evidence that SAYWHAT is a movement. Ladies and gentlemen, there is Glenn Hiwayo here. Where are the other guys from other tertiary institutions? Where are they now? They went through the system and went out to show that it is just a club. Next, they talked of, they downplayed the influence of social media. In this day and age, where Donald Trump makes a tweet and the stock market goes down, then you downplay the power of social media. It leaves a lot to desire. Ladies and gentlemen, they then went on to talk about how SAYWHAT last in October groomed 40 people from different institutions. It's just 40 people, 20 from the northern region, 20 from the southern region. What of the other people? Can you really say that SAYWHAT is a movement after it is grouped just 40 people of I don't know how many, 30,000 or even more? I cannot even put that to percentage because it is just mere. It is insignificant. So having said and done that, we deserve to win the debate because we came here and told you that SAYWHAT is registered as a club in tertiary institutions. We say that SAYWHAT addresses, SAYWHAT is a safe space that is regulated by a lot of formalities. And then we talked of the power of influence. Then we talked of the power of social media. Ladies and gentlemen, for now, we are not yet there. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, I am perplexed at the level of the non-affirmers not understanding the basic definitions that we brought to them, the basic definitions that they say they agreed with, but went on to debate on something totally different. According to our definition and the characteristics that we said that define a movement, they did not rebut any of those. They did not take down any of our points, but they added one of their own, that of influence and of numbers. And their whole debate was on influence and numbers, but never taking down what we said defines a movement. Now, ladies and gentlemen, they talk of popularity on social media. The way we like and enjoy the jokes about the poverty or the struggles in Zimbabwe does not define a movement. Ladies and gentlemen, we said the impact and the results. And we brought you the examples of the impact and the results. Now, they said something about interrogating, innovating, and accelerating. Now, a movement having achieved something that we have achieved as SAYWHAT the movement, and choosing to continue as a movement, because movements are continuous, does not mean our continuing discredits what we have achieved before as a movement. Ladies and gentlemen, they talk of registration of SAYWHAT as a club in tertiary institutions. Whatever you are registered as does not qualify or disqualify you as a movement, but what you get to achieve, which we have given as what defines a movement. Ladies and gentlemen, the activities that we talked about of influencing policy, instilling progressive mindsets, actually facilitating pragmatic dialogue and debate as we're doing right now, or pioneering, that is achieving unprecedented activities and results that they have not taken down of all of these points, but raised one of their own, that is of numbers. Okay, we take it numbers. You brought one, we brought 5, and you did not take down any one of them. Therefore, I would say we deserve to win the debate, but I'll continue. So, she spoke of standards, right? Standards define a movement. So you say it's standards, in addition to numbers. That's okay. But we have the characteristics, which are standards.
Now, I'm going to make a very unpopular decision. On technical grounds, the affirmative side won the debate. And for reasons that were very clear, at the end of the leader's reply, you could tell with the way he was sober in dealing with them, they were very great speakers, better speakers than them. But on technicality, these guys knew they had it won. I saw them passing each other notes because they managed to be coherent throughout with their arguments. And you could tell at the end of the presentation that he was sober. It was no longer fighting because he managed to get them in the fighting mode. But the speaker, the best speaker for me for this session is Vanessa. The eloquency with which, the mastery of eloquence that was displayed here, the voice projection, how you managed to pace your voice and changing it. Most of the speakers were consistent with their pace from the beginning to the end, but she could draw us to her impact points. She could draw us to what she thought were the best points of her argument, and I thought that was great, and you can build on that. So, in closing this debate, our best speaker was Vanessa from UZ, and the winning team is the affirmative side.